That night at the restaurant was a turning point for me, though I didn't realize it at the time. It was my mom's birthday, and the venue she'd chosen was this fancy Italian place downtown. Parking was a nightmare, and the air was filled with loud conversations about hedge funds and yoga retreats. It was all so typical, like every other family gathering where we pretended everything was perfect. I knew the drill. They'd order whatever they wanted, act like royalty, and then expect me to cover the bill as if it was my duty. In their eyes, I was never the middle daughter or the supportive sister. To them, I was just a wallet, the one who didn't have kids or a husband, so clearly I had no other priorities. My brother had this struggling real estate business and 3 kids to manage. My sister was always between gigs and apartments, barely scraping by. My parents? They'd retired into this fantasy where I existed only to fill the gaps left by my siblings. But that night, I decided to change the script. I didn't bring my wallet on purpose. I wanted to see what would happen if I just stopped being their invisible butler for once. I brought a small gift for my mom, a thoughtful photography book from a trip she once dreamed of but never took. It wasn't about the money, it was about the thought. Dinner started like it always did. Everyone talked over each other. My dad ordered the most expensive wine and pretended he couldn't see the prices. My sister loudly shared her stress for the benefit of the nearby tables. My cousins were there for the free food and Instagram stories. I mostly stayed quiet, observing. Then came the moment that changed everything. After dessert, my dad stood up and tapped his glass. He gave this speech about how proud he was of our family, how grateful he was for my mother. But then he turned to me and said, "This guest no longer belongs here." The table went silent for a moment. My cousins laughed like it was some kind of joke, and my sister raised her glass in agreement. I looked around, expecting someone to question what was happening, but no one did. It wasn't a joke. It was planned. So I smiled and said, "Then dinner is on you." And I walked out. I didn't look back, didn't make a scene. I walked 2 blocks to my car and drove home in silence. It was strange. I felt calm, like I had just escaped a burning building and only now realized how hot it had been inside. About 30 minutes after I left, the waiter brought them the bill, $2,800. That's when the call started. First my sister, 6 missed calls. Then my brother, then my dad, which almost never happened. The texts came next. They were angry, demanding, full of accusations. "You better not be serious right now. We can't pay for this. You always do this for family. You just left. Who does that? Are you punishing Mom? It's her birthday. I swear to God you're going to regret this." I turned off my phone and poured myself a drink, trying to process everything. It wasn't just about the bill. That night I finally saw things clearly. They didn't invite me to celebrate. They invited me to pay for their celebration. And when they thought I might stop being useful, they decided to publicly humiliate me in front of guests, cousins, and my mom's old coworker. Around 10:30 p.m., someone rang my doorbell. I checked the cam. It was my parents and my brother. I didn't even have time to decide whether to open the door. They buzzed in when a neighbor walked out, and by the time I reached the hallway, they were already inside. They walked in like they owned the place, like it was still the old script, and I was just forgetting my lines. My dad said we needed to talk. We talked for hours, but not the kind of talking that fixes anything. That night was just the beginning. They didn't knock like people who felt guilty. They knocked like people who were sure they were owed something. By the time I opened the door, they were already halfway in. My dad moved like he'd been rehearsing what to say all the way over. My mom wouldn't meet my eyes. My brother walked in last, quiet, hands in his pockets. Nobody said hi. "We just want to understand what that was all about," my dad began, like I had flipped a table and stormed out of a wedding. My mom jumped in, saying how my leaving had embarrassed them, how it had ruined the night. It was surreal standing there in my own home, feeling like the intruder. They didn't see it as a wake-up call or a plea for change. To them, it was just an inconvenience, a deviation from the norm that needed correcting. I realized then that they would never see me as anything other than what they needed me to be. I remember the night so clearly. It was supposed to be a nice family dinner, one of those rare occasions where everyone gathers at the same table, but instead it turned into something else entirely. I left abruptly, and that action seemed to have hurt people. They didn't say who specifically, just that it was painful for everyone involved. My brother mentioned how harsh it felt when I walked out, as if I had turned some private family tension into a public debacle. The guilt was palpable, and I felt it closing in on me like predators circling their prey. I asked them what was expected of me. Was I supposed to sit there, smiling, while they belittled me in front of the guests? Was I supposed to laugh it off like it was just a harmless family tease? My dad simply dismissed it as a joke, suggesting I shouldn't take things so personally. My mom chimed in, saying my sister didn't mean it the way it came out. My brother insisted it wasn't about what was said, but about how I reacted to it. That's when it hit me. They weren't there to apologize. They were there to reset the narrative. I had disrupted their script. I was expected to take the jabs, maybe sulk a little, and then quietly cover the bill when it arrived. Their anger wasn't about me walking out. It was about me not paying before leaving. As I sat there, not responding, they seamlessly transitioned to the next part of their routine. My dad brought up how things had been financially tight lately. My mom mentioned my sister's rent was increasing, adding to her stress. My brother mumbled something about needing to fix his car. Their hints were subtle, but not really. This was the moment I was supposed to step in and offer help. But I couldn't. I told them I was done. I couldn't keep being the one holding everything up while receiving nothing but passive aggression and disrespect in return. I explained that the words spoken at that table crossed a line I didn't even know existed, and they crossed it. I watched my mom's face fall as she realized this wasn't just about one dinner. My dad tried to maintain control, asking if I was really going to cut them off over a misunderstanding. My brother surprisingly stayed silent, looking more awkward than upset, as if he'd realized he was in the wrong place for the wrong conversation. I told them I needed space, a lot of it, and asked them to leave. They didn't yell, they just looked bewildered, like I was malfunctioning in a way they couldn't quite understand. But they left. When the door closed, it felt different. Final. The silence that followed was the kind that comes when you finally turn off a machine that's been humming in the background for years. The next morning, I logged into my bank account and saw the automatic transfer. Every month, $100 went to cover my sister's rent. She never asked politely. She cried about potentially losing her apartment months ago, and it somehow became my responsibility to fix it. I canceled it. No message, no warning. I didn't owe her one. She'd find out soon enough, 4 days to be exact. And when she did, I knew exactly how the family would react. They'd accuse me, guilt me, spin a story where I was the one who changed, the one who abandoned them. That's when things would really start to unravel. 4 days later, the storm arrived right on cue. It started with a text from my sister. Rent bounced. What happened? Then came the calls. I didn't answer. She called repeatedly. I muted her number after the 7th attempt. An hour later, my mom called. Your sister's in tears. She could be evicted. She didn't know the payment wouldn't come. Why didn't you tell her? I didn't respond because the truth was simple. I didn't tell her because I didn't owe her. For over a year, I paid her rent every month without thanks, without fail. She never treated it as help, but like a salary, as if I was just the unmarried, childless middle daughter whose life existed to keep everyone else afloat. And when she toasted my exile at that dinner, she had no idea she was also cutting off her own safety net. But I guess they all assumed I'd get over it, that I'd cool off and return to my role just like every other time. Only this time I didn't. That night, my sister showed up at my building. I didn't let her in. She stood outside, calling, texting, sending voice messages like she was trapped in a burning building. I don't have anywhere else to go. Why would you do this to me? You're seriously going to ruin my life over a dinner? The irony was scorching. I didn't ruin her life. I just stopped saving it. The next day, my dad called. This time, he left a voicemail. This is family. You don't pull support over something like this. You're better than that, right? I'm better. I'm responsible. I'm dependable. I'm the one who pays. I'm the one who stays quiet while they disrespect me in public, because that's what the better one does. I didn't respond. They didn't stop. For 2 straight days, my phone didn't stay quiet for more than 10 minutes. They rotated between guilt, pity, and anger. My brother even texted me something brief. Don't punish the whole family because you're mad at her. That's when I realized they all thought this was about my sister. They didn't see it for what it was. Years of being used, expected to carry the weight while they complained about how hard their lives were. So I made a decision. I called my grandmother. I remember sitting there, staring at my phone, and feeling this overwhelming wave of exhaustion wash over me. The kind that settles deep in your bones and makes everything feel heavier. I had just finished telling my grandfather everything, all of it. From the moment my dad pointed his finger at me across the dinner table to them barging into my apartment like I was some sort of criminal, I laid it all out, how they expected me to cover ridiculous amounts of money for my sister's rent, how they twisted every situation to make me feel like I owed them something. My grandfather, he's different from the rest of them. He wasn't at that dinner, and honestly, he's one of the few people in the family who still manages to keep some distance from all the chaos. They pretend to respect him. Maybe that's why I felt like I could finally just let it out. He listened to me, really listened, without interrupting or judging. When I finally finished talking, he asked me one simple question. What do you want me to do? I didn't hesitate. I told him, tell them the truth. Tell the rest of the family what they didn't see, how they treat me. I was done shielding them. For once I wanted things to be out in the open, no more hiding or covering for them. He understood. He didn't argue, just said, okay. And that was the start of it all. The following week was a blur of whispers and rumors. Things spread fast in our family, especially when it's something they don't want to hear. I started getting these calls and messages from relatives I barely knew, second cousins and aunts who usually only reached out on holidays. They were suddenly curious, wanting to know what was going on, acting like they cared. But I knew the truth. My parents were livid, my sister was apparently heartbroken, and the narrative was being spun that I was the one twisting facts to make them look bad. But I hadn't twisted anything. I just stopped hiding it. I expected a backlash, maybe more of those guilt-tripping texts or dramatic voicemails from my mom, but nothing came immediately. Just silence. It felt like they were regrouping, trying to figure out how to get ahead of whatever my grandfather was going to say. Then, one day my phone buzzed with a Facebook message from Carla, my mom's niece. Technically my cousin, but we were never close. She was always the quiet one, the observer in the family, the one who slipped under the radar at gatherings. I never thought she paid much attention to anything, but it turns out she was watching everything. Her message was simple and unexpected. Hey, I heard what happened. I'm really sorry. I always knew something was off with how they treated you. It caught me off guard. I asked her how she knew, assuming it was just the usual family gossip. But her reply was quick and clear. Your grandpa told everyone at brunch, said it was time people knew the truth. I later found out that my grandfather didn't just tell a few people. He dropped the entire story at a big family brunch, with a table full of extended relatives, including people I hadn't seen in years. There was no build-up, no soft landing, just the facts. He laid it all out, the birthday dinner, my dad's words, how my sister toasted my exclusion, and how they all expected me to pay $2,800 while mocking me in public. Then he explained how I'd been paying my sister's rent for over a year, and how they came into my home demanding answers, never once considering that maybe they were the problem. According to Carla, some people were stunned. A few of the older relatives tried to defend my parents, saying maybe there was more to it, but most people just stayed quiet. Apparently, it was the way he said it. No anger, no theatrics, just straight truth. And in that room, that carried weight. I didn't know how to respond to Carla. All I could manage was a simple, thank you. Later that night, I got a text from my dad. You humiliated your mother. That was it. No questions, no acknowledgement of what really happened, no apology, just that I'd made her look bad. That's what this was about for them. Control. They felt it slipping away, and they were panicking. I didn't reply, I just let it sit there, a silent acknowledgement that things were changing. 2 days passed before I received a message from the front desk of my building. I had a package. I hadn't ordered anything, so I assumed it was some delivery mistake. But when I got there, I saw the box. It was medium-sized, sloppily taped, with no return address, and my name written in Sharpie. Inside was a strange collection of things. A few old shirts I'd forgotten at my parents' house, a coffee mug from college, a school photo of me at 10 years old, and one of those paper cards from a dollar store. Completely blank except for one sentence in the middle. And if this is what you want, then here it is. No name, no explanation, just that. It was petty, passive-aggressive, but it told me everything I needed to know. They weren't sorry. They were trying to spin it into my abandonment, painting me as the villain in their new version of the story. I took the box and dropped it off at the donation center down the street. I didn't need any of it. It was never about the objects anyway. That night, I made it official. I left every group chat, removed myself from every family thread, and blocked my sister, my dad, my mom, even my brother. Changed my phone number and updated my contact info with the few relatives who actually treated me like a person. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even emotional, just necessary. I thought they'd retaliate, maybe try to show up at my place again, or try to drag more people into it. But what happened next surprised me more than anything. They adapted. A week after I cut them off, I heard from Carla again. She sent me a screenshot of my sister's Instagram story. It was her, my parents, and my brother on a beach somewhere. Matching drinks, fake smiles, hashtags about family time, and hard-earned breaks. Apparently, my parents had started covering her rent again. Not only that, they were traveling, posting meals and cocktails, rebuilding stronger connections, or at least pretending to. At first, it felt like a punch to the gut. Here I was, still processing everything, still dealing with the fallout, and they were acting like life was perfect. But then I realized something. It was their way of coping, their way of pretending nothing had changed, even though everything had. They were trying to maintain the facade to show the world they were still in control. But I knew better. I knew the truth. And for the first time, that was enough for me. I didn't need their validation, their approval, or their version of family. I was finally free to live on my terms, to build a life that was honest and real. It wasn't easy, and it still isn't. But it's mine. And in the end, that's all that really matters. When I look back now, I can't help but wonder how I let it get to this point, how I let myself be used and manipulated for so long without seeing through it. I guess when it's your family, you just assume the best in them, even when the evidence is staring you right in the face. For years, I was the financial backbone of our family. I worked hard, earned well, and didn't think twice about sending money to help my parents, my sister, and my brother whenever they needed it. They always seemed to need it. My parents would talk about cutting back. My sister was always on the edge of eviction, and my brother, well, he was just doing what he could with what little he had. It felt good to help them, to be the one they could rely on. I didn't need recognition or gratitude. I just wanted to make sure they were okay. Then, one day, everything changed. I was scrolling through social media, not really looking for anything, just passing time. That's when I saw it, a photo of my family. They were on a beach somewhere, posing like they didn't have a care in the world. There were hashtags like "Chatted finally peace" and "Adanut family strong." And my sister had tagged a luxury resort in Florida. It hit me like a punch to the gut. I remember just staring at the screen, trying to process what I was seeing. They looked so happy, so carefree, like they had no problems at all. It was like I never existed. For years, they had painted this picture of struggle and hardship, and here they were, living it up at a luxury resort. I felt a mix of emotions, anger, betrayal, disbelief, but mostly I felt foolish. How had I been so blind? After that, I started to see things differently. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that they were never struggling. They were just using me because I let them. It was easy for them to create this narrative of hardship and to let me play the hero. But now that I was gone, they had to spin a new story. That same day, I got a message from Carla, a distant cousin. She sent me screenshots of texts my sister had been sending to the extended family. In one, she claimed I had unexpectedly cut off financial support, leaving her facing eviction. In another, she implied I had been emotionally unstable and was punishing the family for being happy without me. It was almost impressive how quickly they had turned the story around. I went from being their savior to the villain in a matter of days. I didn't respond to Carla right away. I needed time to think, but the more I sat with it, the clearer it became. I had spent years managing their reality, paying for things quietly, never telling anyone what I did for them. And now that I wasn't there to filter it all, they were spinning it their way. They had learned one thing from me: silence creates power. But now it was working against me. I decided I couldn't let it go on like this. I needed to tell my side of the story, not out of anger or a desire for revenge, but because I finally understood that being useful to people isn't the same as being valued by them. So I wrote something. It wasn't an angry message or a rant, it was just the truth, start to finish. I included dates, amounts, and names. I explained how I'd been paying my sister's rent every month for over a year, how I had covered 2 of my parents' vacations, including one they told the family was a gift from all the kids, how my brother had sent me grocery lists for his kids, and I had quietly paid them, never asking for anything back. I added screenshots of payment receipts, not to humiliate, but to make it real, and I ended it like this. I didn't walk away because I was angry. I walked away because I finally understood that being useful to people isn't the same as being valued by them. I'm not asking anyone to take sides. I just won't keep lying by staying silent. I sent it to 8 people, just 8, the ones I knew were getting the twisted version from my parents, the ones who had been liking those fake beach posts and commenting things like, "So happy to see you smiling again." Most didn't reply, but 2 did. One was my cousin Nathan. He just said, "I had no idea. I'm sorry, Celine. That's ed up." The other was my uncle, my mom's brother. We hadn't spoken in years. His message surprised me. He said, "I always wondered why your parents treated you like you owed them something. Now I get it. Thank you for saying something." That was it. Just those 2, but it was enough. It was enough to know that someone else saw the truth, that someone else understood. I guess it's time to finally talk about it. I've been holding on to this for a long time, and maybe if I share it here, it might help someone else going through something similar. So, it all started with this letter. I found it in my mailbox one day, and at first I had no idea what it was. It wasn't addressed to me. It was meant for someone from my grandfather's side of the family. It was like a draft, a rough attempt at explaining my absence, or rather, to justify it. The letter talked about how I had a breakdown after years of being isolated, how bitterness took over because I was alone for so long. It painted a picture that they had done everything they could to support me. But here's the thing, they never sent it. Somehow, it ended up with me, and I can't help but think maybe it was a mistake, or maybe someone in the family was tired of all the lies and wanted me to see the truth. I'll probably never know the real reason, but this letter confirmed what I had known deep down. It wasn't just about letting me go. It was more like they were trying to erase me completely. They needed to ensure that I was the broken one in the story, not them. And that was my breaking point. I decided to make the final move. I dismantled everything that still connected us. There was this storage unit we shared, filled with boxes of family stuff they never bothered to collect. I was paying for it. There was a cell phone plan that my sister was still on, and I just shut it all down. I canceled services, transferred ownership of whatever shared assets I could legally remove myself from. And then, for the first time in my adult life, I blocked my mother. I hesitated before doing it, not because I thought she deserved another chance, because she didn't, but because I knew the chaos it would unleash. But in the end, I pressed block, and I didn't look back. The days that followed were surprisingly quiet. I didn't hear from any of them, and I thought maybe, just maybe, they finally understood. But then something unexpected happened. My grandfather reached out to me. He sent a short, almost cryptic message. It said, "They're scrambling. They didn't know you'd go this far." So I called him. He told me that once they realized I'd truly cut them off, with no numbers, no emails, no way to reach me, they started turning on each other. My dad blamed my sister for pushing too hard at a family dinner. My sister blamed my mom for letting everything go public. My brother was apparently trying to stay out of it all, but he was secretly asking our cousins if they thought I'd ever come around. Then my grandfather said something that truly hit me. He told me that my mom had been calling him. She said they wanted to talk again, but not to apologize. They wanted to fix their reputation. Not to fix anything with me, not to understand me, just to salvage what others thought of them. And that's when I knew I had made the right choice. My entire family, my mom, dad, sister, and brother, they had become so used to treating people like pieces in a game. I was just the one who stopped playing. They continued with their lives, still traveling, still paying rent, still smiling in pictures. But the shine was starting to fade. People began asking questions, noticing the discrepancies in their stories. And the more they tried to protect their image, the more obvious it became. They weren't victims. They were just not used to being told no. Now they're on their own, and they don't like it. So here I am, talking to you, trying to put into words what's been happening in my life. There was this moment, a shift, when everything started to change. I found myself in a space where there was no signal, no noise, just me. It was strange at first, almost unsettling, but then it became liberating. I started to rediscover things I used to love, reading books that had been gathering dust, cooking meals with recipes I hadn't tried in years. I reached out to friends I'd lost touch with, friendships that had faded because I was always too wrapped up in family drama, too drained to make an effort. It was like reclaiming pieces of myself that I'd forgotten existed. This space I'd created, it felt like mine for the first time. I rearranged my apartment, cleared out closets filled with things that weren't really mine, things that belonged to other people's expectations and needs. I started saying no, and it wasn't easy at first. But those no's were clean and unapologetic. I said them to people who only appeared when they wanted something from me, and with each no, it felt like I was finally able to breathe after being submerged for so long. In that quietness, in that stillness, I began to feel something I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't hope for them to change or for reconciliation. It was hope for myself, for what my life could be when it wasn't filtered through their moods and demands. One afternoon, I met up with Carla for coffee. We hadn't seen each other since everything went down. She looked at me, really looked at me, and said, "You look light." And I laughed because that's exactly how I felt. Carla filled me in on what had been happening behind the scenes. Apparently, after I'd cut ties, my parents tried to rally the extended family to their side, but it didn't go as they planned. Too many people knew the truth, had seen the receipts, remembered those little moments they'd brushed off before. The facade was cracking. The news story they spun was that I was going through something and needed time to heal. It was their way of saving face without admitting any real guilt. Carla said they still thought I'd come back. I nodded, knowing they didn't realize there was nothing to return to. Because the truth is, I didn't just walk away from a single bad night or a cruel comment. I stepped away from a whole system, a role I didn't create but felt obliged to perform in. And once I exited that space, I saw it for what it truly was, a machine that operated on guilt, silence, and unspoken rules designed just for me. They don't miss me as a person. They miss what I did for them, the money, the emotional labor, the quiet forgiveness. Somewhere deep down, maybe they know that version of me is gone. A few days ago, I found another letter in my mailbox. This time, it was from my mom. It wasn't handwritten or typed, Just a folded piece of paper without an envelope. It said, "We still love you no matter what you think." I stared at it for a long time. Love? What kind of love shames you in public? What kind of love uses you until you break and then paints you as the villain when you finally say, enough? To them, love is a leash, a currency, a weapon, something they extend only when you play your part. I folded the note and tossed it away. Not out of anger, but because it didn't hold any weight anymore. I don't need their version of love. I'm building something different now, something honest, something quiet, something that's mine. It's strange how much space you gain when you stop trying to make yourself fit into other people's comfort zones. I used to shrink in family conversations, bite my tongue, soften my words, pad the truth. I thought that was maturity, that it was love, but it wasn't. It was survival. Now that I'm not just surviving them, I'm learning how to live. A few weeks ago, I walked through a farmer's market and passed a booth selling handmade journals. The woman behind the table smiled at me, not like a salesperson, but like someone who saw something in me. She said I looked like I had stories to write. I bought a journal. That night, I opened it and wrote one sentence on the first page. I will not apologize for outgrowing the version of me that made you comfortable. It wasn't for them. It was for me. It's a reminder that I'm not the villain in their story. I'm the author of mine.